Perfect. So thank you guys all for joining today. This has definitely been a work in progress for a long time. And for those of you who are not aware, my name is Sarah Dukmasian. I am the Adirondack Rural Health Network Manager for Adirondack Health Institute. For the last, it's been 2 years. For the last 2 years, Rachel and Sue and the Adirondack Rural Health Network and AHI have kind of been working on this LGBTQ health and well-being series, and there's a lot more partners to it. Rachel and Sue just happen to be our all-stars. And so I'm not going to take up my time. I'm going to turn it over to them to present. But if you guys, when you're done with this presentation, if you ever find that there is something you're interested in, questions-wise, any resources you're looking for, please feel free to reach out to myself, Rachel, or Sue. I will also put a link to our LGBTQ health and well-being page in the chat, so you'll have that. And then we're always looking to add resources and get everyone information that we can in that area. So with that, I'm going to shut my screen off and mute, and I'll turn it over to you guys.
Thanks, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rachel Marcey, and I'm the LGBT Outreach and Engagement Manager for Planned Parenthood of Greater New York. And Sue and I work under a grant from the New York State Department of Health AIDS Institute to provide LGBTQ plus training, instruction, and resources, just like the one that we're going to be doing today. So we'll get us started right away, and I'll turn it over to Sue.
Thanks, Rachel. I'm Sue Wendelgass. I'm the Director of and Programs at Planned Parenthood of Greater New York. And as Rachel pulls up our slides, we're going to be talking about working with LGBTQ plus youth. But before we get into the essence of our talk today, we want to show a brief video of a fairly common experience for LGBTQ plus teens in schools. And while Rachel's pulling that up, I just want to thank you for putting your affiliation in the chat, because it helps when we have to do grant reporting that the state always likes to know who we talk to.
You know that dream everyone has? You know, the one where you're trying to run, but you can't. Or when you're trying to scream, but nothing comes out. Well, that's what it's like. I used to try to scream, to speak up, to make a noise. But all there was silence. Now, I don't even try. Neither does anyone else. I just stay silent.
Oi, gay boy. Go and give us a kiss. No, it's not me and mommy.
Right, boys. Come on, it's class.
I'm in, miss.
Did you see Miss Smith's hair, though?
I think it's sexy. Oh my god, it's so gay.
I suppose. We'll just go up and see what's up.
Yeah, supposed to.
So, for that?
So how was your day?
Fine.
You sure? Here's the thing. You control the dream. You can do anything you want. I mean, You could fly. You could be in Scotland one minute and Japan the next. You could be married to Zac Efron, if he's your type, that is. But I'm pretty sure he's everyone's type. The point is, you're in control, and you can affect what happens. Sometimes I have that horrible dream where I can't run. I try and try, but I'm not getting anywhere fast. But then what's the use in running anyway? This is my reality.
Although this video comes from Scotland, and I apologize for the accents, which is why we left up closed captioning. Sadly, this experience rings true for LGBT youth across the world. For many LGBTQ youths, school is a place of insults and attacks, where people do not defend them. Many LGBTQ youth do not feel safe at school, and as the youth in the video says, this is their reality. I made a note, he said, speak up, and all there was, he tried to speak up, and all there was silence. There's implications to this, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But first, we wanted to do a brief terms review. We're going to start with some basic definitions, just so we're all on the same page, and I apologize if you're already familiar with this. But by now, we've probably all seen the acronym LGBTQ+, and maybe some other versions of it with additional letters. We're just going to use this version today, the basic one. The first three letters all relate to someone's sexual orientation. L stands for lesbian, that is women who are romantically and sexually attracted to other women. G stands for gay. It's often used to refer to men who are attracted to men, but technically it means people who are attracted to other folks of the same gender as themselves. B stands for bisexual, which is someone who's attracted to people of the same and of different genders. The next term, transgender, is totally different. Transgender, T for transgender, means a transgender person is someone who believes they were assigned the wrong sex at birth. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a bit. Q is for questioning, so it may be someone who's unsure of their gender or of their sexual orientation, or for queer. You probably heard in the video, the one kid said, "It's so gay." Queer for years was used as a slam just like that. It was an insult. And now some people are reclaiming it to express that they're not straight, while others won't touch it because it was used as an insult for so long. The one thing I will say is terms are really personal. So while it's sometimes tempting to say, oh, she's a lesbian, she may not call herself that. She may call herself a gay woman. And you never want to label someone. Let people pick what they want to call themselves. And lastly on here is the plus. That is, you may have seen this acronym with the letter A for ally or I for intersex. The plus just lets us add other terms with and being inclusive without adding more letters and making it even more awkward. All right, just a couple more terms. Sex assigned at birth. In the US, we usually have whoever delivers the baby looks at the baby's genitals and says, congratulations, you have a boy or you have a girl. It's based on a visual inspection of the genitals. This is the sex assigned at birth. We sometimes also call it gender. If someone feels they were not assigned the correct sex at birth, so someone maybe was assigned female, but says, in my head, I am not female, they're called transgender. If someone says, I was assigned female and I am female, they are called cisgender. That's what those two terms mean. Assigning either male or female at birth is what we call a binary choice. A lot of you are educators. You know binary choices. You do true-false tests. A true-false test means you don't want an essay, you want one answer or the other. And that's what we tend to do with babies overall. And here's the problem with a binary choice. Not everyone fits into these two categories. In fact, we now believe that both gender, the sex assigned at birth, and sexual orientation, who someone's romantically attracted to, probably exist on a continuum, with some people strongly at either end and other people on the continuum in the middle. So the term non-binary was created and exists to describe people who don't see themselves as strictly male or strictly female. Some people feel more male some days, more female others. Someone might say, I don't fit either of them. Someone could be in the middle or a variety of other options. Recent studies show that 25% of LGBTQ youths do not identify strictly as either male or female. They identify as either non-binary or use multiple other terms to describe themselves. And we're moving away from binary definitions even at birth, because right now 14 states allow non-binary notations on birth certificates. And the first US passport has been issued with an X on it to indicate the person is non-binary. So why are we doing this? Well, by using terms like non-binary, we're trying to be more inclusive of people who don't fit these traditional categories. There are many more terms than these, but you don't need to know them all. But we did want to show you a few of them. So as I said, lots of other terms. These are just a few of the terms available on Facebook for people to describe their gender. So instead of just male or female, there's tons of other options. I think there's 50 plus. Now you may encounter students or peers who use one of these terms, and you don't need to know what they all mean, but you got to be comfortable asking someone what it means to them. For example, if Rachel and I both identify as pangender, it likely means different things to each of us. It's okay to ask, but the one thing I want to caution you is, remember, lots of the LGBTQ population have had experiences like that kid in the video. So they're going to be listening for tone, listening for an attacking tone. And what does that mean versus what does that mean have very different implications. When you're attacked for who you are, you become sensitive to tone and subtle meanings. So just be aware of how you sound. And just a note, I know that Sarah mentioned it a little bit before, but AHI will be sharing our slides, and there also is a great glossary of terms in their resource page in case you want to check out any that you still have questions about after we're done today. And we have two final terms here, gender expression. Gender expression is how someone chooses to show their sense of self. The clothes they wear, their hair, how they walk, the pronouns they use. For many people, this is likely to look different in different settings, like work versus home. People who are what is called gender expansive or gender nonconforming do not fit the stereotypes for their gender. The first picture is of A$AP Rocky, a rapper and record producer who probably a lot of kids you may work with will know. And the second is of the actor Billy Porter. Both of these men are considered gender expansive, as they don't always appear in a way we typically expect males in the US to look. You may work with kids who are gender expansive, perhaps somebody who identifies as male but chooses to wear makeup and t-shirts who you associate with females. This does not say anything about a person's sexual orientation. It only says they're choosing non-traditional or non-stereotypical ways to express themselves. But in our society, there's often consequences for behaving in a non-typical manner, and we will be talking more about that. But before we get there, I wanted to show you our human being. This was our Planned Parenthood human being, which was designed by one of my colleagues. And some of you may have seen these terms on a genderbread person or a gender unicorn, two other outlines that are used to explain them. We decided to go with this visual because we wanted to be really clear. We're talking about human beings, real people, not food like a genderbread person or not mythical creatures like unicorns. We wanted to really drive home the point. We're talking about real people with real feelings, thoughts, and emotions. So going from bottom to top, biological sex is the sex assigned at birth, typically male or female. Moving to the heart, sexual orientation, who someone is romantically attracted to. Moving to the top, gender identity, in someone's head, who they know they are. If it matches the gender they were assigned at birth, they are cisgender. If it doesn't match, they are called transgender. And then moving down the far left, gender expression, how you show others who you are, how you dress, how you walk, your hair. And people who defy gender stereotypes are often referred to as gender expansive or gender nonconforming. So there's our terms for the day. We're not gonna keep going on that. There's a lot of terms out there, but we wanted to move into more the guts of today. When I first saw this quote from the Center for Excellence in Transgender Health, I just fell in love with it. And the concept that words who recognize people for who they are make room for everyone to exist. Sometimes people will say to us, well, we never talked about this before. I don't accept these terms. Why do we need to talk about it? And they're right about one thing. We didn't used to talk about this. But here's the thing. LGBTQ people have always existed, but were often ignored or, worse, attacked. As this quote makes clear, by using the terms people use to describe themselves, we make room for them to exist. If we don't use the words people to describe themselves, we negate their existence. We say by our actions and our omissions that they don't matter. Someone recently asked us, what do LGBTQ people want others to know about them? And LGBTQ people really just want to be recognized as human, to be treated with respect and dignity, to have the same opportunities, rights, and privileges as non-LGBTQ people. This includes being called by the names they use and the correct pronouns, as Rachel is going to talk about shortly. They want to not also be attacked for being different. You know, it comes down to respecting and treating someone, even if they're different from you, as another human being. And if we can just do that, we'll have made big steps forward. We don't have to agree with someone to show them respect. I kind of get caught up in people saying, well, I don't agree with that. I work with people, both coworkers and our clients, who I may not agree with on a range of issues, but I still treat them with respect, dignity, and courtesy. This is what we're asking. You may not agree that sex exists on a continuum, or that there ought to be 50 plus words to describe gender. You may not even fully understand how someone knows they're transgender. But when that youth works up the courage to tell you that they think they might be gay, please put all that aside and just treat them like any other person with kindness and compassion. You will have made a massive difference in your life by doing that. And please be aware, they may have had very bad responses from other people when they told them that, so they will likely be watching your response pretty closely. As I said, when people's existence is negated or when they're attacked for who they are, it can have a really negative impact. And this is reflected in these statistics here. Kids spend a lot of their waking hours in school, and as they age, their peers become the most important influence in their life. So how they're treated at school and after-school programs is critical. Yet 52% of LGBTQ youth in the most recent studies in either middle or high school report being bullied in the past year. Transgender and non-binary youth have higher rates of bullying than LGBT youth who identify as the sex they were assigned at birth. And for most youth, bullying is most extreme in middle school. Now, I recognize some people say, well, bullying is part of growing up, and that most of us have experienced it. But here's what's different for a lot of LGBTQ youth. They often don't have anyone who defends them. People back away. Oh, she's that weird kid. And even adults don't step in to stop it. I'd suggest each of us need to ask ourselves, do the kids we work with see LGBTQ plus people being stood up and defended? Because if you don't see anyone standing up for who you are, that has consequences for how people feel about themselves. And it's complicated by how difficult, I'll use that word, our society has become of late. Let's look at some of the headlines that have made the news about LGBTQ people just in the past few weeks. We have politicians talking about gays deserving to get beaten up for being perverse and saying straights are superior to gays. They compare gays to cow dung, which is actually one of the nicer things I've heard said recently. School boards are suggesting gay books be burned. Groups are offering money to turn in divisive teachers who dare to teach inclusivity. Transgender people, including kids, are being viciously beaten up, and the number of murders of transgender people in the US is at an all-time high. Remember what I said probably a couple of slides ago about just wanting to be treated with respect and dignity? This is not it. This is not how we care about. Now, we know as adults, this is not happening everywhere. Lots of this is in certain areas of our country and all that kind of stuff. But if you're a teenager, an LGBTQ plus teen, hearing about this will likely feel overwhelming, like everyone is against you. And if this teen is unlucky enough to also have a non-supportive family and school, this can be devastating. So here's the number that really should worry all of us. LGBTQ plus students are in study after study at least 4 times more likely to attempt suicide compared to their straight and cisgender peers. Survey after survey. Remember, school's only part of a kid's day. They may have family or community that rejects them as well. And while we can't control all aspects of somebody's life, as we'll be talking about in a few minutes, you do have the ability to impact some of someone's life. But before we get to that, I just want to talk a couple more pieces about school issues here. We have all these initiatives, state and nationally, on reporting and ending bullying. But the reality is bullying still happens to kids and has a major impact on mental health. One LGBTQ youth I know quite well attended a local school district in the capital region, and for years begged his parents to let him be homeschooled as he couldn't stand it. It started in elementary school, went all the way through middle school, and he used to fake illness to not have to go to school. I think sometimes we forget what that experience would be like, so let me put it in a perspective many of us can relate to. I know lots of adults who on Sunday nights are feeling a little less enthusiastic about going back to work on Monday morning. Imagine how it would be if you had to go to work and know that some of your peers, when you showed up to work, would shove and spit at you and call you awful names on a daily basis. Your other co-workers would lower their eyes and not stand up for you as they didn't want to become targets. Your boss might hear it, but would either tell you there was nothing that could be done or totally ignore it. As the slide said, 60% of those harassed said school staff did not intervene. Human Resources gives you a vague promise. It'll get better, but nothing ever seems to change. How do you think you'd feel on a Sunday night then? That's what some LGBTQ kids face in school, and that's why many struggle with depression and thoughts of suicide. Also, studies show LGBTQ kids are less engaged with school and have lower academic performance. Let's be real. I think many of us would be at our best if that was what we had to go through every day at work. The ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, did a study that said over 30%, more than 3 in 10 kids who were identified, not who came out as, but were identified as transgender, either dropped out of school or were kicked out of school. Rates for not finishing school are similarly high for lesbian, gay, and bisexual kids. But here's the thing, when school gives them support and safety, these disparities are reduced or even eliminated. So there are things that we can do. Now, I've used the term privilege a couple times, and I did want to define it. Justin Garcia gave a great definition of privilege. He said, privilege refers to the social advantages, benefits, or degrees of respect that an individual gets just by belonging to certain groups, not by nature of their activities, but just by belonging. And in the US, people who historically have the most privilege includes whites, males, heterosexuals, and the wealthy, among others. So guess who has less privilege? It's the groups on the screen, LGBTQ plus included. They're one of the historically marginalized groups in our society. Now think of the LGBT youth who also may be a person of color or an immigrant with an accent. We often say we celebrate differences, but the experience of people who actually live these lives doesn't necessarily reflect that. This is the concept that's sometimes referred to as intersectionality, where the more someone is different from what is considered the norm, the less privilege and access they have, and the more experiences of discrimination and disadvantage. So you may be working with a youth who already struggles with being treated badly for having a disability or being a different race or ethnicity. For many of these youths, IDing as LGBTQ only makes a target on their back a little bigger, as it gives people another reason to treat them differently. And yes, there are levels of privilege within the LGBT community, as we've seen from some of the statistics. LGBTQ people who are cisgender, who identify as the sex they were assigned at birth, are bullied less than LGBTQ people who are transgender. Black transgender women are murdered at much higher rates than other transgender people in the US. So who you are matters. And I say this all just so we can understand that someone who may fit into multiple groups with less privilege is going to have an even harder time. I don't want to make you feel overwhelmed, but I want us to all understand the scope of what many kids are dealing with, all while trying to manage the usual school stressors of homework and exams, and yes, now COVID. This is hard, and a lot of kids are struggling whether they show it or not. A new survey that just came out this week said that Generation Z, that's 13 to 24-year-olds, are the most stressed due to COVID of any age group. And that's what I think a lot of folks are dealing with. And so what sometimes happens is this results in trauma for people. Now, we often associate trauma with the effects of war, but trauma can occur when any event overwhelms a person beyond their ability to cope. So think of it, it could be a disaster, a death of a loved one, or even repeated bullying. And what defines an event as traumatic isn't how you or I think about it looking in, it's the response of that person. So if it overwhelms me, it's traumatic. What overwhelms me might not overwhelm you, and vice versa. It depends on the person. Now, most of us will have trauma in our life, but just because you experience trauma doesn't mean you're traumatized. Many people will struggle, but ultimately get back on their feet and back to normal functioning. Traumatization occurs when there's long-term negative effects on the person's ability to function, when they cannot get back to normal. Think of my friend's son who was bullied and harassed for years. He had trauma. And when someone is traumatized, this is what they can feel. They feel exhaustion and sadness and anxiety and numbness. And they have trouble trusting others and setting boundaries. It affects their basic ability to function. I imagine some of you may have specific kids you're thinking about when you look at this list. And looking at it, you can see why the attempted suicide rate of LGBTQ youth is so high when someone has these feelings and experiences. Remember, youths are focused on the present to a great degree, as their long-term thinking is still developing for many of them. What's happening to them now is that's what's most important, and it can be hard to see a future beyond it. And if what is happening now is awful, these feelings can overwhelm them. So I've painted a pretty bleak picture, but here's the good news. Multiple studies about LGBT youth have shown that even one person, particularly an adult, who is supportive, can help make a positive difference in their lives.
Sparks grew dim. When the nights drew in.
Oi, gay boy. Go here and give us a kiss. No, it's up with your mammy.
Both of you, headmaster's office now. No, but miss, I'll not tolerate that kind of behaviour. And I certainly will not have you in my class. Now, just go. Just go. We won't tolerate that here, Jamie. We are here for you. How have you been coping?
Did you see Miss Smith's hair though?
I think it's suicide. Oh my god, it's so gay.
What are you talking about? Don't you know that offends people?
What are you on about?
Well, you're saying it like it's a bad thing, describing something you don't like.
Which I'm pretty sure makes you a homophobe.
Nah, I didn't mean it like that. Don't be stupid.
I'd rather be stupid than be a homophobe any day.
Try thinking before you speak next time.
Fine. I'm sorry. You're totally cool. I didn't mean to offend you.
Who's doing this?
Just leave it, Dad. Doesn't matter.
It does matter, son. Is it beautiful school?
Look, I appreciate it, but I can deal with this myself, okay?
Son, you don't have to deal with yourself. Listen, let me help you. Is that your guidance teacher? Let's go speak to him together then, eh? Listen, I promise I'll not embarrass you.
Silence helps homophobia. Stand up, speak out.
So what are we going to do about it? It may sound a little harsh, but this is a call to action. We are all in a position of power. And as Sue had talked about a few minutes ago, we all have privilege to varying degrees. We have privilege just being adults. We also have varying degrees of social status and authority. But most of all, we have the power to influence. Sue and I can provide definitions, we can provide education, happy to be a resource, but it is up to each of us what we choose to do with that information. Teachers and adults have a huge impact on students and youth. And you as an individual can make a real difference in someone's life, as Sue had mentioned earlier, and most of us are aware of already. No pressure, right? Having, that kind of power is a big deal. It's an awesome responsibility to know that you can set the tone. So how do we go about building a foundation around respecting differences? According to new research, you only have about 27 seconds to make a first impression. A study among 2,000 Americans found that 7 in 10 people form a first impression of someone before they even speak. So that means that we need to start by showing people that they are welcome. So how can we do this? Well, a lot of us wear name tags or badges. So what about sticking a pride pin or a pronoun pin to, your shirt or your top? I don't know if you can see, I have my pride ribbon on today. Something like that. Show someone right away, without, again, saying a word. Looking around your classroom, your office, your space, and what do you have hanging on your walls? Is it possible to put up a poster like this LGBTQ history poster that you see on the slide here? It can be as simple as Googling a pride flag and printing it off and taping it up on your wall. So again, look around your space, post those visuals, but visuals themselves mean very little if we don't back them up. If we don't back them up, it will lead to mistrust. Someone will see, some sort of pride symbol, and then when they're not treated fairly or welcoming, then they'll feel like, well, I thought that I would be understood here, but I'm not. And that leads to mistrust. So we need to also help people feel welcome. And we can build trust by setting expectations for what is acceptable in your space. So that can include talking about respecting differences. As a reminder, we don't have to understand someone in order to respect them. We don't have to agree with someone in order to respect them. We talk about being aware of the impact that people's words and actions can have on one another, intentional or not. Also, keeping an open mind. I have the golden rule on the slide here. You may have heard this growing up. Very simply, to treat others how you want to be treated. It sounds cliche, but it's true, to this day, and will continue to be. Another helpful tool is, in laying the groundwork for expectations is showing a brief video like the one that we just showed today. Showing lived experiences of others can make a really big impact if you're not really sure where to start. And just as we want to be clear about setting our expectations, we also need to be clear about what is not acceptable in our space and the consequences for those actions as well. So we will share some resources shortly. One of them is a link to a pledge that both students and teachers can sign to show commitment to respecting others. So that can be a helpful tool to use as well. As I mentioned, you have the power to influence. So it's really important, most important, to be a role model. Encourage respect, encourage honoring differences, intervene when there's trouble, as we saw the teacher do in the video we just saw. In line with setting expectations, there's also usage of someone's preferred name and pronouns. Ask from the get-go, what name would you like to use? This can be done in simple conversation, or I know at the beginning of school year sometimes, or beginning of a social group or activity, you may hand out like a get to know you or an all about me type form. So the information could be on something like that as well. Generally, when we are meeting someone or introducing ourselves, we will give the name that we want people to use for us. So listen for that name and use that name. A legal name refers to the name on your birth certificate. So if a youth's legal name is needed for school enrollment purposes, for example, be sure to refer to it that way as their legal name. We never want to use the words real name, and continue to refer to the person with the name that they prefer at all times. Studies show us that usage of someone's chosen name resulted in a 29% decrease in suicidal thoughts and a 56% decrease in suicidal behavior for LGBTQ plus youth. Dead name is a previous name that a person no longer uses. So if someone does refer to a name as their dead name, just know that they don't want you to use that name when speaking with them. We want to consider nicknames as well, like sweetie, honey, young man, little lady. A lot of times we try to use them as terms of endearment, but we really just want to use a person's name instead. Nicknames are often gendered and they can be viewed as embarrassing and insulting. And that's not just in the LGBT community. That goes for anyone. I know sometimes people will call me ma'am at the grocery store and I just cringe. I don't like it. Much prefer just, take the gender off of it, leave that out and say, have a good night. They is a pronoun that is broad, and so it's helpful to use if you're not sure. We have some examples here on the slide of traditional pronouns such as he and she, in Spanish, él, ella, and there's even more. We recommend using they because we don't want to make assumptions. So if you're in a situation where you don't know what someone's pronouns may be, using they is a safe bet because you won't in that way use an incorrect pronoun and upset or embarrass or offend someone. Pronouns should be made optional if a person would like to share them. We don't want to make pronouns mandatory as much as we're trying to be inclusive because a person still needs to have that option. They may not choose to disclose theirs if they're feeling unsure or feel uncomfortable doing that. Asking for a name used and pronouns shows respect. Again, no one wants to be called the wrong name and pronouns. It's okay to ask someone for spelling if you're unsure, but it's not okay to make any kind of comment about what the person's indicated they want to be called. Again, be a role model. For example, good morning, I'm Rachel Marcey, but please call me Rachel, and I use she, her pronouns. You set the tone. It's all about setting that example. So you've hung your pride poster, you've set expectations for your space, you're using preferred name and pronouns, and you slip up. Talk about cringe. This happens to all of us, to err is human and all of that. But remember, it's all about treating people with respect and common courtesy. Showing someone that they are worthy of your attention and your concern. Showing someone that you consider them to be important and valuable to you. So don't think the person missed it if you call them the wrong name. For example, my name is Rachel Marcey. Many a time people will call me Marcey. I always notice. We want to genuinely apologize. I'm sorry. Don't feel you can skip the apology if the person says, no, it's okay, don't worry about it, because it's not okay. But you also don't want to make a huge deal about it. You don't want to keep apologizing over and over. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. Can you believe I called you by the wrong name? Can you believe I called them by the wrong name? That's embarrassing. So you don't want to go over the top. Just acknowledge it. I called you by the wrong name. And then you want to correct it, move on, and don't do it again. And as we know, apologies really don't mean anything if the behavior continues. So we really want to commit to making sure we're correcting ourselves and not doing it again. And we always use this quote, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it, because it's so true. We all need support systems. Studies and just life experience in general show that poor social support has been linked to depression and loneliness. It's also been shown to alter brain function and increase the risk of alcohol use, depression, and suicide. Support builds people up during times of stress and gives people strength. It feels good when someone has your back, right? So are you able to start a PFLAG chapter in your area? PFLAG stands for Parents, Families, and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. Or what about starting a GSA or a Gay Straight Alliance at your school or in your area? There are links on the slide here with information on how to get these supports started. What about starting sort of small or a little more informal and forming a pride club at your school or youth center? It was Gandhi who said, a small group of determined and like-minded people can change the course of history. But a little more relevant to this, it was a high school junior who said of her school's pride club, it's made me feel more open about myself because I can now talk about it with other people who are like me. I'm not out to my parents, but I like to help my friends through their relationship troubles and help them figure out who they are. It's really hard to find people when you don't have a club like this. Also incorporating curriculum that includes LGBT people in a positive light. When talking about the accomplishments of people, also mention if they were a part of the LGBT community. For example, Alexander the Great, or Michelangelo, or the first American woman in space, Sally Ride, just to name a very small few. Encourage open communication. Make clear that there are point people available if students need someone to talk to. Provide the names of those people, their roles, whether they're a teacher, principal, guidance counselor, and provide their contact information as well, and have it easily accessible and displayed with reminders throughout that the supports are available. And finally, participate in Pride Month and Pride events. If you're not sure which direction to go on that, you can partner with local LGBT-friendly agencies for guidance and support, such as Planned Parenthood, Adirondack Health Institute, Centro Civico out of Amsterdam, In Our Own Voices, and more. Please reach out because we are here to help. So what do we do when we get pushback? Someone says, why are you asking that? Those kind of people don't live around here. There are only two genders. Well, this goes back to setting and being clear on those expectations right off the bat. Explaining why at that time. We want to make every student feel comfortable and respected. We are all different. We may not understand why or how a person does something, but they are still a person worthy of respect and worthy of value. You could also use as a reminder to all that even people who are not LGBT sometimes prefer to use names that are not their legal names. We want everyone to be addressed in the way that they want. Read the situation that you're in as well. If someone is genuinely curious, this is an opportunity for a teaching moment. If the person's being defiant or argumentative, don't argue with them. Just simply say, if that doesn't apply to you, we can move on and move it along. What about not my kid? You may unfortunately get the parent who says they won't support their child who says that they're LGBT. You have to decide how you want to handle these situations. Is this an opportunity to offer education and resources? As you consider your options, please realize that studies show that gender-affirming behavior or support of the LGBT person from parents or other adults hugely improves mental health and overall well-being. Unfortunately, the opposite is true as well. Sue spoke earlier about LGBT people whose loved ones reject them having much higher rates of depression, substance abuse, homelessness, and suicide attempts. You may not be able to change the family, but you can model kindness and respect towards everyone who comes to you. Again, we don't necessarily have to understand someone to respect them, to care for them, to value them. Sue spoke earlier about we have coworkers, we have families, we have friends. We may not understand things about them. We may not agree with everything they do, but we still respect them. I mentioned earlier about offering resources. So speaking of resources, typically we would save these for the end, and we do have just a couple of more topics to cover today, but these resources are really so valuable in a presentation like the one we're doing today that we really wanted to get to them fairly quickly. So these are just a few of the many that are available. Sarah and Sue mentioned this earlier, but the first we have here is the link to Adirondack Health Institute's LGBT resource page. There is a ton of information here, and the glossary of terms that Sue mentioned earlier is posted here as well. The next is a link to GLSEN, the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network. GLSEN is the leading national education organization focused on ensuring safe schools for all students. This site has several of the resources I mentioned, such as that non-discrimination pledge and so much more. There's also information on how federal dollars for schools can advance intersectional LGBTQ+ inclusive equity. The next link is to the Trevor Project, and this is the world's largest suicide prevention and crisis intervention organization for LGBTQ+ young people. It's an excellent resource for youth, for parents, educators. You can find a ton of studies, statistics, resources, and helpful information there. The last three links are for local youth support groups, and there are options for in-person as well as virtual. The first is Capital Pride Center, which offers several group options. Just a few would be Schenectady, Saratoga, Albany. The next is True North, which offers groups out of their location in Glens Falls. And the last we have listed here is Saratoga Center for the Family, and they have a youth group that runs out of Saratoga Springs. Not to mention, of course, Sue and I can be a resource as well. We have additional resources besides these, but we wanted to give you the bulk here. And Sue and I do offer free training on a variety of LGBT topics. They're customized to fit whatever your need may be, and we will share our contact information in just a few minutes. So I talked earlier about some immediate changes that can be made, but what about some larger scale changes? Sometimes these can be intimidating because we may not have the ability to make these changes in our roles, but we can continue to advocate for them. So that's why we wanted to bring them up today. New York State anti-bullying laws protect LGBTQ students from bullying by other students, teachers, and school staff on the basis of their sexual orientation and gender identity. New York State school non-discrimination laws protect LGBTQ students from discrimination in school. This includes being unfairly denied access to facilities, sports teams, or clubs on the basis of their sexual orientation or gender identity. If you're able, post these policies district-wide, have them accessible for students. I know a lot of students use like a school planner, have them posted in there just so that people are aware that not only these policies exist to protect them, but also that they're there, so that if there are consequences needed, that, they're clearly lined out for expectations, because it's again, all about setting those expectations right off the bat. Sue talked earlier about gender expression, or how I show myself to the world. And this includes, of course, how I dress. So dress code policies often separate people by gender. So a theme kind of for the end of this is to take the gender out of it with a gender neutral dress code policy. Also, we want to think about the terms that we use. Again, take the gender out of it. Instead of saying he or she, use they. Instead of boyfriend and girlfriend, use partner. Instead of mother and father, use parent. You can still convey the same information without using those gendered words. If you have specific questions about inclusive education strategies, please reach out to Sue or myself. For more direction on policy, you can refer to the links on the previous resource slide. So I mentioned using facilities. So what about the bathrooms in your school and your space? Are they marked men's or boys' room, ladies, girls' room? Do you have any single stall options? Can any of them be changed to an all-gender restroom as shown in the slide here? The National LGBT Cancer Network created this free campaign called Do Your Business, Mind Your Business, and it increases bathroom safety for transgender and gender nonconforming people. The campaign was created to increase tolerance and acceptance in public restrooms through repeated exposure to posters that are easily understood from a glance. So the poster here with the toilet, it actually says, "Please be kind to those who use this restroom. A person's gender is not always clear, but we all need to pee in peace." All gender restrooms are an important step in decreasing harassment in public bathrooms and are another way to make an inclusive and safe space. So to sum up a few key points from today, studies show that these 4 factors are considered most important in making a school LGBT affirming. If a school is actively working on these points, they will create inclusive and welcoming environment for all people. We talked about developing key support systems such as a PFLAG chapter or a Gay Straight Alliance or a Pride Club. We talked about taking a look at your policies. Take the gender out of it, take the gender out of dress code, and take the gender out of language, using preferred name, using pronouns. Incorporating curriculum that includes LGBT people in a positive light. And continuing education for staff is so important, just like the presentation we're doing here today, and providing that continuing education at least yearly. Terms can change quickly, and it's important to stay current. As educators, most of you know that we are never finished learning. Leonardo da Vinci was an Italian artist, an engineer, scientist, among many other things. Historians believe that he was also gay. And he said, "Learning is the only thing the mind never exhausts, never fears, and never regrets." And as I mentioned, Sue and I can be a resource. So please reach out if you need anything. We do offer free training on a variety of topics. Planned Parenthood is a resource as well. We're here to serve the community. We also do have free items available to help you show your LGBT support to your community. We have pride pins, we have ally pins. Also on one of the slides shown here today were some pronoun pins. We have those available for free as well. If you're interested in any of these items, please reach out. We will be sharing out the slides so everyone will have our contact information. And at this time, we'd be happy to take any questions or comments. And if you'd like to ask a question privately, please feel free to email us or call us.
Before we quickly turn it over, I just want to add that, as Rachel said, I mean, they have a million resources available, which are awesome, and they're all just exactly what you're looking for. But AHI also has a couple different things. We have all our welcome here signs. And if you don't necessarily, if you're not sure you're going to put it up and you don't necessarily want the laminated one, I can also give you PDF versions and you can print it out to your leisure. And then we also have something called Gender Your Guide, a gender-friendly primer. And I'm saying the whole thing so you can Google it. On what to know, what to say, and what to do in the new gender culture books available. It's a lot of words. I will make sure that I won't do it to you now. I won't bother you now, but tomorrow I will send an email to all of you and I'll put all this information in there so that, you don't have to quickly go and copy and paste it into Google if you are interested. But if you're interested in anything of that nature, please reach out, and you can always reach out to me, Rachel, or Sue, and we'll figure out who's got what resources that way. And everything I've put in the chat, other than asking you to put your organization in, I will include that in the email, the website, and all, so that you won't have any confusion, and I'll put the slides in there as well. All right, now I'll open it up to all the questions you want. Sorry.
Perfect. Thanks, Sarah.
Hello. Is my microphone working?
Hello, yes, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Nina. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm actually the GSA club advisor at Queensbury High School. I'm sorry my camera isn't working for some reason. I'm at home. But I first want to say thank you so much, Rachel and Susan, for your really clear, excellent, authentic presentation. And what you shared resonated with so many things that my students have expressed to me. So again, it was just really spot on. And originally, about half an hour ago, I had a question which was going to be, could you please give some suggestions for inclusive practices? But you did all that. So moving on, and time is short, I know. I just think in today's context, I do get a lot of resources from GLSEN, and I had a consultation with a GLSEN local representative recently. But one of the things I have hesitated to do, but want to do, but don't want to overwhelm our faculty, because as you said, it is a context of a pandemic and so forth, is GLSEN has a great pronouns cheat sheet that just explains pronouns. And what I like about it too, and what was new to me, is that one would know we don't even ask anymore, what are your preferred pronouns? Because that implies that pronouns are preferred. It's just, what are your pronouns? And I would love it as a district. I'm not sure what grades this would start in, but certainly at the high school, I have on my email at work, I do have my pronouns on my email. I'm not sure what the boundaries would be, or of asking all faculty members to do that, or just indicating that if you're comfortable doing that, that would be a really important inclusive practice. But I guess I don't want to take up too much time. I'd love to follow up with you to let you know what we are doing, which is a lot. The club, we do have policies. Our curriculum, I think, is somewhat inclusive, but possibly could be more. GLSEN has so many great resources. I did email our director of athletics the policies regarding inclusion for athletics this fall as well. So I think we're really trying, but the staff training is so valuable, and your expertise is extremely evident. And when you said at least yearly, I would echo that. I think this is somewhat new information to a lot of individuals, but also increasingly salient and relevant information, along with the statistics that you shared regarding bullying and just suicide rates and what I would call microaggressions that the person from GLSEN I spoke with this fall really opened my eyes to. When you do have these little tiny, they're not even small, tiny implies they're not important, but when you have these events and experiences over and over and over again where you're either not acknowledged or you hear a slur, and perhaps if an adult is witnessing but doesn't know what to do or doesn't intervene, it really does affect your self-esteem. And I would love it if our faculty could have that little cheat sheet of what in the second set of videos you shared, what the faculty members and adults and parents did, almost a script, because I think if we uniformly and consistently implemented that, it would make a very significant difference in our culture and in the well-being of our students. So I've taken enough airtime. I just wanted to say thank you so much. Very grateful for the really terrific information you shared, and I would love to collaborate with you further.
I think definitely we would love to collaborate with you, because any school that's trying to do the right thing is a wonderful gift to those students. So please feel free, reach out to us, get in touch with us. We will help in any way we can. And we're just down the road in Saratoga, so not far to travel. We're happy to work with you.
Great, thank you so much.
And I did see that Nicole actually popped a message into the chat. I'm not sure if you saw it, but it says that she's being trained as one of the Train Your Trainers currently with GLSEN, and that she'll bring some stuff to Queensbury, and that she wants you guys to have awesome training. So Nicole, thank you. I wasn't sure who was going to see it, but I'll make sure it's out there. Does anyone else have any other questions? I know we're 1 minute past, but I don't want to cancel any questions on anyone. So feel free to unmute or put it in the chat. And then if we don't hear in a few minutes, we'll just kind of close up, but you'll definitely be able to reach out to Sue and Rachel and myself at any point in time.
I just have one more comment, if I may.
Yeah.
What you shared about, the best practices for using the wrong name, dead naming students, I know those practices, and even though I'm very conscientious about not using the legal name, the dead name, I was recently testing a transgender student who I knew 3 years ago when they were Ashley, but now they are Jackson, and I was saying Jackson, Jackson, Jackson over and over again. And then I slipped and said Ashley. And one reason is because I'd reviewed so many records to get prepared for the evaluation that said Ashley on them. And I had known this student previously, and they are now in a different program out of the building. But since that time, I've only known them as that individual, that other name, the dead name, until recently. But I knew to say, I'm sorry, that's your wrong name. And I would, if everyone just knew that very simple way to make a mistake right, I think that goes a long way. So there's so many small but very significant skills and behaviors that we can, put out pervasively into our school environment that I know would make just a massive difference. So again, what you said was really right on with my experiences, and I'm really excited that we're in a climate currently where there is a need to really increase DEI practices. So I'm excited to have you both as resources, and Sarah and Nicole.
And just like you said, Nina, the microaggressions, the little slights that cut at people, also the little things we can do to build someone up just as equally work in the opposite direction. So those are just as important, the little things we can do to apologize and make someone feel like they're respected. Perfect.
Yes, I love that. I always say any feather you can put on that side of the scale, it really has a cumulative aggregate effect. So yes, thank you, Susan.
Perfect. Okay, so I guess I will close it out because I don't want to it's already pitch black near me. So I can imagine, I can see in some of your windows, it's getting pretty dark. So I don't want to take up any more time. As I mentioned, I will send you out an email tomorrow with all of the resources that Sue and Rachel have provided, including the slides and all the information that I've put in the chat. I will also give you a heads up now as well that the recording will probably not be available. I'm hoping it will be available by the 23rd of December. We have a 2-week turnaround on our end through AHI to get communications in there. But as soon as it goes out, I will send you another email. You probably won't see it to the new year, and that's fine. But just know that you'll get that follow-up. And if you know anyone who did register and may not have been able to join, I don't necessarily have a way to, or somebody who saw it, I guess I should say, I don't have a way for it to send them the presentation other than the attendee list. So please feel free, forward along the emails that we give you. And if you have any questions, like I said, email us. So thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. We're glad we could offer this. And if you want any more resources, reach out and we'll see what we can do for 2022. Well, that rhymed, but So thank you guys so much. Thank you, Sue and Rachel. You guys are awesome.
Thank you.
And yeah, we'll see and talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, everybody. Happy holidays.